In this lesson, we will be covering Autodesk Inventor's dimensioning capabilities in a 2D sketch environment. The file that I have open right now is the dimensioning.ipt file, also found in the Chapter 2 exercise file folder. With Autodesk Inventor, we're pretty much going to be working with a single dimensioning tool. As you can see here, it's called the General Dimension. The shortcut is the letter D. And those of you that have AutoCAD experience, you'll see a lot of similarities here. I can simply select the edge and then pull my cursor down. And in this case, I will pick on a point to place that dimension. And then with the parametrics in place here, I can type in a value. Now, the dimension appeared after placing it for me to change it, and that's an application option. Under the Sketch tab, the Edit Dimension when created, that's off by default. So in this case, that dialog box would not have popped back up. I would have had to double click on that dimension to change it. So I would suggest changing the option here to have that checked. Let's take a look at some of the other capabilities here with the General Dimension tool. You can also pick on points. But you'll notice what I'm not doing is I'm not having to use object snaps. Inventor is intelligent. It knows exactly what I want to do by selecting on those given points. So let me undo that one last time here. And let's pick those exact same points. So just like AutoCAD, if I move my cursor to the left, to the right, to the bottom, Inventor's always suggesting what and where that location is going to be. So in this case, let's place that at 10. So let's place another dimension. I want to place an aligned dimension. So if I select on the angle line that I have, and as I pull the cursor up or to the right, I'm getting horizontal and vertical dimensions. If I want an aligned dimension, I can either right-click and click on aligned, or I'm just going to hit the escape key and do that again and show another method here. If I again select on that angle line, you'll notice I'm getting horizontal and vertical. I'm going to select on that exact same line again to get the aligned dimension, so I can change that value to, in this case, say 14. To place in an angle dimension, I'm going to select two lines, and you'll notice here this is where a lot of people kind of get a little confused, because right now Inventor is displaying, in this case, a vertical dimension. But keep on moving the cursor down, and you'll see that the glyph changes, showing that if you pick on that, you're going to get an angle. So now, depending upon where I move my cursor, is how I'm going to define that angle. So in this case, I'll just put it right up here and change that to 120 degrees. To dimension an arc, in this case, I'm still in the same dimensioning tool. I'm going to select on the arc, and by default it will be a radius or a radial dimension. If I want that to be a diameter, I can right click and change that to diameter. So in this case, it's telling me that that dimension is already locked down by another value, so I'm going to go ahead and click on cancel there for a second. And let's remove the 10 millimeter dimension that I had and just hit D from the keyboard and replace that dimension again. The key here with the menu, changing it from a radius to a diameter, that needs to be done before the dimension is placed. Once it is placed, you'll have to erase it and replace that. So in this case, if I really do want that to be a diameter, change that back to 12, and everything is good to go. Let's just quickly draw in a circle, create an island. And if I place in a dimension again, hitting D on the keyboard, you'll notice that the dimension for the circle will default to a diameter by default. And of course, I can right click and change that to a radius if I want it to. So I'll change that back to diameter. Let's place in a value of 8. And the circle is dimensioned. So I'm going to go ahead and erase that dimension. Now, maybe I want to go back and I want to control the wall thickness between the arc and that circle. So again, I'm just going to hit D from the keyboard, select on the circle, select on that arc, And I'm now going to define the distance between both of those. Let's change that back to 3. So there's a whole bunch of different ways to go back and dimension out that geometry. For the next dimension, I'm going to go ahead and erase out the 30. I'm just going to hit the escape key because I was already in that dimension tool. I'm just going to hit delete on the keyboard. And what I want to do in this case is I need to control the overall length from the left vertical line to the right quadrant in this case. So let's go select on our general dimension tool. And the key here is I'm going to select the right or the left vertical line first. Moving the cursor, you'll see that the glyph will change. And as soon as it is showing me that the dimension right there is going to be to that quadrant, I'm going to pick on that and place in that dimension. Let's change the value to 40 to get the overall. So that worked really well. Just keep in mind that I need to select the line first, and the dimension is going to be placed tangent to the line selected. So if I would have selected this angle line, I would get, let's actually do that. Let's select the angle line. Moving the cursor again until that glyph changes. And let's change that value to 20. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of different ways to dimension those off. I'm going to undo that here for a second. And the next part I want to talk about here is I have another file called slot.ipt that is as well in the Chapter 2 folder. And I'm going to place in another dimension, but in this case, I want to dimension the overall length of the slot. So of course I could come back and just select on the arcs themselves or the center points and get the center to center distance, but that's not what I want, so I'm going to press the escape key. I'm going to select on the arc. I'm going to move the cursor to the right hand side, again until the glyph changes, showing me that it's going to go from the tangency to tangency, or in this case quadrant to quadrant. Type in a value to get the overall distance. So fairly easy to do, so it didn't matter which arc I selected first or second. Let's go back to our previous drawing for a second. For the next example here, I'm going to place in a 3-point arc. And with this 3-point arc, I'm also going to apply a horizontal constraint to the two endpoints to lock them down horizontally. But what I want to do is I want to control the angle between the arc here. So again, I'm just going to start up the dimension tool, select on the arc, select on the center, and now I can control the angle. So let's say I want that to be 150 degrees. So I just selected on the arc, and then I selected on the center point to dimension that. Fairly easy to do. So let's draw in another 3-point arc. So in this case, again, if I start up the dimension tool, select on the arc, select on the center point, and being that the open area is less than 180 degrees, that is what I'm going to define here with the angle. So I could say I want that to be 60 degrees. And then of course I could come back later and apply a dimension or a constraint to lock that down if needed. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to start up a brand new part file. And for this next example, I'm going to draw in a few lines here to represent geometry that I want to revolve. So we'll just draw something in fairly simple. And if I start up the general dimension tool, and if I place in a value, let's say 25 millimeters in this case, if I rotate the part, and I go back and do a revolve on this, you can see the issue with doing a revolve is that that 25 is a radial dimension, and probably what I really want to do is define that as 50 millimeters for the diameter. So I'm going to undo that. look back at my sketch, make that active, and I'm going to erase out the 25 millimeter dimension. And I'm going to do general dimension. And the key here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the line that will actually be utilized to do the revolve, or the axis of rotation. So I'm going to select that line, and then either the other edge or a point. And you notice at this point it's exactly the same, but now what I'm going to do is right click, change it to linear diameter. So it sees it now is twice the size that it was before. And again, you're just going to select the inside edge, right click, linear diameter, place that, give it a value to get exactly what I needed to do for that given sketch. So now when I rotate this, and let's revolve the sketch, the dimensions are exactly in line with the diameter that I was looking for. Let's cancel that. I'm going to erase those two lines. So that works well if you have the edge right in the part that you're going to revolve around. But in this case, I want to take it off of a center line. So I'm going to draw in another line segment that I want to revolve around. That's not necessarily right on that part. And I'm going to select on that, and I'm going to change its style to a center line. Now with that center line, Inventor is going to understand that there's something different going on here. So what I'm going to do is select the center line, and again the edge or a point, and it will automatically default to that linear diameter for me. As you'll see, if I right click, linear diameter is the default, which makes it a lot easier to do. Change that to 100. So that makes it very quick, very easy to do. So let's just revolve that just to show you what the finished part will actually look like. In this case, spin it around to see the top. One last topic to talk about when placing in dimensions. I'm going to start up a brand new part file. I'm going to draw in a rectangle. I'm going to hit D is my shortcut key. I'm going to place in two dimensions, a horizontal and a vertical. And you'll notice the dimension that is required, or the number of dimensions that are required to fully constrain it, is being decreased with each dimension that I place. So everything is fully constrained, but by accident, if you happen to place in another dimension here, Inventor will not allow you to over-constrain the sketch. So the default here is the dialog box is going to pop up, and it's allowing me to accept or cancel. If I hit cancel, nothing's going to happen. If I place that same dimension, and if I accept the value, it's going to go in as a driven dimension. As you see, it's grayed out. I cannot type in there. It's along for the ride. It's kind of like an AutoCAD associative dimension. So if I double click on the bottom horizontal, change that to 40, the top one will change. Now you can also change this. So I can select on my driving dimension right now, the parametric dimension, come back up on the standard toolbar and say that is now going to be a driven dimension. And I'm going to reverse that for the top one. So now I can pick on that top value and say, well, change it back to 35, and the other one will change. So there's an option under the Tools, Application Options. So under the Sketch tab again, we have the option for over-constrained dimensions to warn us exactly what was happening before, or apply the driven dimension. So let's see what happens here. With that checked, if I apply another dimension, let's do the vertical, it just avoided the dialog box, and it's going to place in that driven dimension. There's very little I can do at this point. Just enter to accept that. Of course, I could come back and delete that.